State, call your first witness.
The state of Florida calls Gary Knowlton.
Sir, if you can stand here to be sworn, please. If you could please stand, clerk.
Do you swear affirm that the testimony given this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just watch your step, please, or reach.
Good morning. Make sure to speak into the microphone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury, please?
I'm Gary Brent Knowlton,
Mr. Knowlton, can you spell your last name for the record, please?
Knowlton.
And where do you live, Mr. Knowlton?
I live at 1625 Montia Court in Punta Gorda.
Back on August 9th of 2016, were you married to Mary Knowlton?
Yes,
And was Mary a member of the Chamber of Commerce here in Punta Gorda?
she was.
Did you and Mary attend a chamber police night at the Punta Gorda Police Department on that day?
Yes,
How old was your wife on that day?
73.
Was your wife, Mary, shot and killed at the Punta Gorda Police Department that night?
Yes,
Had you and Mary ever attended a Punta Gorda Police Department event together before that night?
some, yeah.
Before that night, did your wife, Mary Knowlton, have any experience handling firearms?
None.
To your knowledge, had she ever touched a gun before?
I don't know for sure, but she never owned one or never had interest in having one.
Thank you, Mr. Knowlton. I don't have any other questions for you.
Any cross-examination? All right, thank you, sir. You may have a seat. State, call your next witness.
State calls Catherine Peterson.
No, if you don't mind, just come over to the main door. You stand here, face the clerk to be sworn, please.
Do you swear affirm that the testimony given this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
And
Good morning, ma'am. Just make sure to speak into the microphone. Okay. You may inquire.
Good morning. Would you please state your name?
Catherine Peterson,
And what county do you live in?
Charlotte.
Are you familiar with the Punta Gorda Police Department?
Well, I know that we have a police.
Do you know Tom Lewis?
Casually, yes.
And how do you know him casually?
You see him at different events.
Have you ever participated in a Citizens Academy with the Punta Gorda Police Department?
Last August,
And who'd you go to that event with?
my husband.
Did you arrive on time?
No, we were a little bit late.
So what part of the academy were you able to see?
We got a short, fast tour of the new equipment that they had, and then we went into the kind of like conference room.
Were you familiar with the shoot-don't-shoot scenario?
Well, yes.
Okay, why is that?
My husband had gone through it with the Charlotte leadership.
So did he tell you what to expect?
Yes.
Did Tom Lewis ever address the group before the shoot-don't-shoot scenario?
I think so. He gave a little background.
Do you remember what he said?
No, I'm sorry.
At any point, did he discuss what kind of weapon Mary Knowlton was going to be using?
After we went outside and we were all gathered around, then we could hear him telling Mary about the gun.
Okay, and what did he say?
Well, he was explaining that she had soap bullets.
And do you know who Lee Cole is
I know who he is now.
now? Okay. Was Lee Cole wearing anything to protect himself?
Yeah, he was pretty well covered. Chief Lewis said that the soap bullets could hurt you if she fired them, so I think he was,
So he was wearing some kind of protection?
Yeah.
Was he wearing anything over his face?
yes,
And that was because Chief Lewis told you that they could still cause injury?
right.
Were you told that Lee Cole was going to have a firearm?
No,
Do you remember how many shots you heard?
I heard 3.
Were you, after the shots, was the group directed to go anywhere?
We went back into the conference room where we had started.
And what were you told while you were in there?
Not too much. Well, we knew it was serious because the EMS people came down.
Is it hearsay? Sustained.
Okay.
Did Tom Lewis come in and address the group?
Again, it's a year ago. I think he did.
Do you remember specifically what he would have said?
No.
Were you in that room for a while?
Yes.
Do you know until about what time?
Yeah, we finally left at 10:30
Why were you there so long?
because they called in the state
The Florida
sheriff,
Department of Law?
the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Yes.
So did you give a statement that night?
Yes.
Did you know Mary Knowlton?
No.
When did you learn that she passed away?
If I remember correctly, we were driving home and it was on the radio.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Morning, Ms. Peterson. So, when you arrived and there was a tour, did you see Chief Lewis giving a tour?
No, the tour is pretty much over. We were late.
Okay, so the tours were over, were you headed back into the conference room?
We got a quick tour on our own and then went into the conference room.
When you went to the conference room, was the group in there with Chief Lewis?
Yes, they were already in there.
And so
Yes.
Chief Lewis, was he still talking to the group as a whole?
I guess so.
And then did you then leave and go out with Chief Lewis to look at the static events like the sirens and the boats and all
Right,
that? Okay,
yes.
And Chief Lewis was with all of you during that also, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you were outside, did you see Miss Knowlton, let me ask you this, after the static event, did you see at a point where Miss Knowlton left the group to go with another officer?
Okay, yeah, there were 2 people that were chosen, and they were off to the side a little bit. Yes,
With another officer, not
Yes.
Chief Lewis?
right, yes.
Okay. And then did you see that officer bring Miss Knowlton back over to the group where Chief Lewis was also?
Correct.
And is that the time when you talked about that you saw Chief Lewis explaining the sim gun and the bullets to Mrs. Knowlton?
Yes.
And then when Mrs. Knowlton walked away with the officer again before the scenario, did Chief Lewis continue to talking to the group?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down, thank you. State, call your next witness.
State calls John Wright.
Counsel want to approach?
Please stand here, raise your right hand, be sworn by the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony given in this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
You can this way. I'll place your hands here. Just watch your steps, please.
Good morning, sir. Just make sure you speak into the microphone. Thanks. You may inquire.
John Wright,
And what county do you live in?
Charlotte,
Where are you employed?
Punta Gorda Chamber of Commerce,
How long have you been employed there?
11 years.
In what capacity are you currently employed there?
The president of the chamber,
And how long have you been the president for?
11 years.
During your time with the Chamber of Commerce, have you had the opportunity to interact with the Punta Gorda Police Department?
On many occasions, yes.
And if I refer to the Punta Gorda Police Department as PGPD, will you know what I'm referencing?
Absolutely.
So you said on many occasions. On what kind of occasions?
They attend regularly our networking events. We've done a lot of programs in conjunction with them together over the time.
Did you know Mary Knowlton?
Yes.
And how did you know her?
She was a very active member of the Punta Gorda Chamber and a dear friend.
And I'm sorry,
A dear friend.
about how long did you know her for?
I would say 5 years.
What about her husband, Gary Knowlton?
Gary attended some of the events together, but I didn't know him as well. But I obviously have got to know him since the events of last year.
Do you know Tom Lewis?
Yes.
And how do you know Tom Lewis?
I've known him for probably 6, 7 years, again through my work with the Chamber and working with the Punta Gorda Police Department.
And do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Okay, would you please point to him and identify him by an article of clothing?
Identification will be stipulated.
Okay. Were you present at the Punta Gorda Police Department on August 9th of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was that?
We were invited as part of the Chamber to go there. This was part of the Citizens Academy that the police department had done on regular occasions. And Tom had approached the Chamber about a month, maybe 6 weeks prior to that date, saying that would this be something the Chamber membership would be interested in attending, since most of us work, most of my business members work and wouldn't be able to attend during the day. So he was going to do a special evening event, which was that night.
When you say Tom, do you mean Tom Lewis?
Tom Lewis and the police department, but it was Tom that actually approached me to see whether we could accommodate
Tom
that.
actually approached you?
Yeah.
Okay. How many people were you expecting?
I believe there was a capacity of 50,
About how many showed?
35.
So there were some empty seats?
Yes.
Did you ever speak with Katie Heck
That night,
that night or leading up to that event?
Katie and I speak regularly. I believe she was the coordinator of the event with my assistant, Pat Oliva.
Katie and your assistant?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your understanding as to what the Citizen Academy actually was?
That we were going to support the police department and learn about what the department did. And that there was a series of interactive, and we were going to visit the various departments and learn from them what they actually did on a daily basis.
When you arrived, what was going on?
I was one of the last to arrive because I'd had an event before, so I took over from one of the girls in the chamber that was checking people off as they came in. So I kind of took over that role and stood at the door, bringing the stragglers into the room.
And were you able then to go and sit down and view some of the presentation?
Pretty much as soon as I'd finished the registrations, the program was starting, and we were being divided into groups to go, groups of I believe 6 or 8, that were going to be going in different directions.
So the larger group was broken up into smaller groups?
It was just wrapping up by then, yeah.
At some point, did the entire group end up outside?
Yes.
And do you know for what purpose?
We started to look at the vehicles, the Punta Gorda Police Department's vehicles that were outside.
And after that, what event occurred?
Then we were led over to the back of the police station where the shoot, don't shoot scenario was going to take place.
And did anybody explain what this scenario was to the group?
Yes,
What was that?
Tom Lewis.
Do you remember what he said?
He explained what the scenario was going to be and what he had the gun in his hand that Mary Knowlton was going to be using, and he explained the bullets that were inside it, the pellets with the paint.
Okay, so when you're talking about, was the gun a specific color that you remember?
Blue.
Okay, so you're talking about a blue gun with soap pellets?
Yes.
And who was the other citizen that was going to be participating in the second scenario?
Debbie Malinowski?
Was she outside at that time?
No. My understanding was both Mary Knowlton and Debbie Malinowski were in the training room where we'd originally met, and they were going over whatever they were being told by the officers. I don't know what was in there.
I'm sorry, so while they were inside, is that when you were outside and Tom Lewis was explaining
Yes.
what to expect?
Yes.
Do you know who brought Mary outside?
I believe Jeff Woodard.
And what happened when Mary was brought outside?
She was brought to my left side, and Jeff Woodard was there, and I believe Katie Heck was there, and that's when we were just waiting for the scenario to start, and I can't honestly remember who said, let's go.
Did you, while standing there, did you notice anything with Mary Knowlton and the weapon?
Her only comment was that she was left-handed and wasn't sure how to hold that weapon.
Can you describe basically the setup of what the shoot, don't shoot scenario was?
That she was told that that there was going to be somebody dressed as a villain, and at some point that Mary had to make the decision whether she would shoot at him to restrain him and prevent him from a threat to her, and it was up to her to decide when and if she was going to pull the trigger on her gun.
Okay, and so this was outside?
Yes.
And about how far away was the group from the scenario?
About 30, 40 feet.
Was it on asphalt? Was it on grass?
Asphalt.
Was there vehicles there?
There were two vehicles parked, and Mary started the scene between the two vehicles.
And was it daylight or nighttime?
It was getting to twilight. I mean, there was a storm rolling in.
Okay, so can you explain what happened once Mary approached?
Mary and I always bantered together, and she looked at me as she walked forward and just said something along the lines of, "This is another fine mess you get me into, I'm looking forward to this." And I said, "Go give him hell." And that's when she walked forward, and the scenario started with an officer dressed in a hood and the visor mask challenging her, and the next thing we heard was three loud bangs.
Okay, so after the three loud bangs, I want to move ahead to, was the chamber group then moved somewhere?
After the shooting?
Afterwards, yes. Without telling me what happened directly after the shooting.
After Mary fell to the ground.
Okay.
Or before?
Was the group ushered anywhere?
Yes, back into the training room.
Okay. And did anyone come in to address the group in the training room?
Yes.
And who was that?
Tom Lewis.
Do you remember what he said?
He was very ashen and said he believed that live ammunition had been involved.
Were you allowed to leave at that time?
No.
How long were you there for?
I personally was the last to leave, so I didn't leave the police station until after I was interviewed by the FDLE at around midnight, 12:15.
Okay, and when you say FDLE, do you mean the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes.
And did they have to take statements from everyone that was there that night?
Yes, they did. Originally, we were told it was probably going to be done in groups, but then I believe it was Tom Lewis that came back in and said once they had come in to the station that it would be done on a one-on-one basis.
When did you learn that Mary Knowlton had passed?
It was around 11 o'clock.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may?
I've showed defense counsel what has been marked as State's Exhibit 1 through 27.
You've been here. If there's no objection, then I'm fine. If there's an objection, then I'll review.
Mr. Wright, would you please take a look at those and let me know if you recognize them?
Judge, but I had no problem with those just being entered.
Okay.
1 through 27 will be entered per stipulation.
May I publish?
You may? Yes. It's balancing on a wire that may move, though. machines working? Oh, okay. Is that just for? Okay. Yes, I can move over. Will the lights dim?
Possibly move if they can't see.
No, I will move if we're worried about that. You can see, defense counsel can see it? I'll move if necessary.
You're about to sit.
Can we dim the lights as well? Can you dim just these? Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Wright, we're looking at State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this?
This would have been the beginning of the presentation where Tom Lewis was explaining what the police department did.
And is that Tom Lewis there to the left of State's Exhibit 1?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit number 2?
They were on every table and chair that was there to select. Everybody got one of those on the night, yes. There was 50 laid out.
Okay, and what was inside of those?
In 2 of them, I believe there was a slip that said, I don't know what it said, but there was 2 that allegedly would put you into the shoot, don't shoot scenario, and 2 that put you in a taser scenario.
And were they just
Randomly spread around the room.
What are we looking at in State's Exhibit number 3?
This looks like one of the groups after we'd split up from the training room that was going around the various departments to be explained what happened in each of the rooms.
So was this part of the tour?
Yes, part of the tour.
Do you recognize the officer that's just left to the center of State's Exhibit 3?
Looks like Jason Chaschini from here.
And State's Exhibit number 4, what is this?
This, I believe, was in the records room as part of the tour.
State's 5?
That was a continuation of the tour in the investigation department, I believe.
And is State 6 a continuation of the tour?
Continuation of the tour, yes, inside.
State's Exhibit 7, where are you now?
This is, we'd moved out to behind the police station to the left in the parking area where all the vehicles were displayed.
And is this the portion that was known as the static display?
Yeah, this was the bicycle, the motorcycles, police cars were all there.
And what was basically the overview as to what the static displays?
They were just showing what the instrumentation on each of the vehicles was and what they were used for.
State's Exhibit 8?
Same part of the same tour. By this point, all the individual groups were starting to collect together.
And did eventually the entire group come together?
Yes.
State's 9, is that just a close-up of the officer in the previous picture of his name?
Yes, I believe.
State's 10?
Continuation of the tour. This was us being told about the Marine Patrol.
Okay, so again, a static display.
Static display.
For Marine this time.
Yeah.
What are we looking at in State's 11?
This was the static display again of now the patrol car.
Right, and who is the officer to the far right?
It looks like Tom Lewis.
State's Exhibit 12.
Same from a different angle.
And who is the officer that we see there?
That is at the door is Tom Lewis.
Is State's 13, again, same static display?
Yes.
What are we looking at in State's 14?
This is during the Tom Lewis's presentation of what was going to happen in the shoot, don't shoot scenario. This is where the whole group had gathered together, kind of in a semicircle around. I guess Tom Lewis was standing in front of us here.
And it's kind of hard to see, but what was the weather like at that time?
It was rolling in. There was a very bad thunderstorm about to come in.
Is State's 15 the same as 14, just a different?
Different angle, yes.
State's 16. Who's in this photo?
This would be Gloria Sapanic, closer to the left. To the left, Mary Knowlton. That is Jeff Woodard and Chris Salzman.
Okay, and what is in Jeff Woodard's hand?
That is the gun that was being discussed with Mary, and this is where I think they were discussing how to hold it, being left-handed.
And is this the gun that you understood to be the one with the pellets?
Yes, ma'am. I was actually standing next to Gloria at this point.
And was this while Tom Lewis was discussing the overall scenario with the group?
He had finished talking, and we were all standing in a semicircle ready for the scenario to begin.
What is State 17? I'm sorry, can you see?
Yeah, this, I believe, is when the gun came out from the training room, because Jeff Woodard would be there.
Jeff Woodard is the officer on the left?
Correct.
Okay, who's the officer on the right?
It's a little blurry from this. It looks like the back of Tom Lewis. Yeah.
Can you tell what it is he's holding in his hand?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? For some reason. Can you tell?
There is a blue gun there. I'm assuming that's the same gun that Jeff then gave to Mary Knowlton.
Do you know what part of the gun that is?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach? That's as far as it will.
Yeah, it's the bottom end, whatever you call that, the handle.
Okay. And I'm sorry, is there anything on the top of it?
I can't recognize what that is. I don't know what that is.
Here's a closer picture of it. Is that the same as State 17 from a different angle?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell what Tom Lewis is holding?
No, I don't recognize that now.
Okay.
That's not the gun.
Okay.
That's not the blue gun that I thought it was.
Okay, can you tell what the thing on the top is?
Could I look at it closer? Because I can't see it well from here.
Your Honor, may I approach?
This looks like when he was describing to us what was in the capsules, in the blue solvent that was used and why it was there.
Okay, the pellets that...
The pellets that were full of some sort of colored detergent.
Again, is State's 19 the same?
That's the close-up of it, yes. Yes.
What are you looking at, State's 20?
This is where Mary's being handed the pellet gun from Tom Lewis.
And what is 21?
Mary's name tag.
State's 22? I'm sorry, what is State's 22?
This would be Lee Cole dressed in the outfit that he had for the scenario.
So the figure on the right, the main figure dressed in
Yeah.
the hooded sweatshirt and dark pants?
Mhm.
And was that before the scenario, or do you?
I don't know when that happened. No, I didn't see that.
States 23.
This is when the scenario was starting, and that would be Lee Cole approaching from behind one of the police cars that were parked in front of us.
And states 24.
Yeah, those are the two police cars that were there, and we would be in a semicircle, kind of where that picture was taken from.
And is this the scene where the shoot don't shoot?
Yeah, this was the start of it.
States Exhibit 25.
This was the first altercation between Mary and the would-be hooligan.
When you say first altercation, you mean when she initially approached?
There was a scene in front of this where it was more verbal, and then I don't see a weapon in his hand from this angle, but he at some point ran behind the white car on the left and grabbed a gun. There.
States Exhibit 26. I'm sorry, what is that?
That's when he grabbed the gun from, I guess it was on the fender of the front of that vehicle, and he took a shot.
And when you say him, do you mean Lee Cole?
Lee Cole.
I have no further questions.
Is anybody going to move the TV?
Yeah, we just leave it here, because I may want to reference those.
Okay, let me know if you do so I can step down. Is approach. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've been sitting there since 9:30, so I think it might be time to take a 10-minute recess, stretch your legs, go use the restroom, whatever you need, just to move around. Sitting for a while, it can hurt. So we're going to take a little bit of a recess, hopefully just around 10 minutes. If you need a little more time, that'll be fine.
You just leave your tablets on your chairs. That'll be fine. All rise. Court is back in session.
John, I'm going to go check on the jury.
Right, perfect, thank you. You may be seated, thank you.
Everybody ready? Got a couple people down.
Yes, ma'am. Nope, you sit. Again, we stand for you. You can sit whenever you'd like. You may be seated. You may inquire, yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Wright. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so you were there then as president of the Punta Gorda Chamber, is that correct?
Correct.
And you brought basically the Citizens Police Academy were other members of the chamber, is that correct?
Correct.
Would you agree with me that most of these people on some level knew Chief Lewis?
I believe all of them knew Chief Lewis.
Okay. So these are people that he actually knows and interacts with in the community in their business position and his police position, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so when you were outside, would you agree with me that the two people that were going to do the scenario Jeff Woodard took to a different location. Do you agree on that?
I don't know whether they were both with Jeff Woodard, but they were certainly in a different location, yes.
So they were separated from the group with other law enforcement?
Yes.
And while that was happening, Chief Lewis was outside explaining things to the rest of the people that were going to be available?
Correct.
I take it you recall then that Ms. Knowlton actually came out with Captain Woodard and reapproached the group where Chief Lewis was, correct?
Correct.
And that's most of these photographs that we went over here. That's the moment when she came back out, is that right?
Correct.
All right. Now, in State's Exhibit number 15, may I approach the board? I'm sorry, may I approach the board over here, the point on here?
You may.
Mr. Wright, you need to bring the photo closer, let me know, but Chief Lewis at this point here is discussing everything with the group, correct?
Correct.
Can you see back over here, these people back here?
Not from here. Could I see the
Yeah,
photograph,
You may.
please?
Ask you to kind of look at the very back there and tell me if you recognize anybody that's in the back of that picture.
Well, it looks like this would be Lee Cole, is right there in the grey hoodie.
Okay.
The officer next, I can't make that out.
Can you see people even further back? Can you see the shirt color of anybody further back?
There's a police officer behind that tree.
Okay, and do you see a shirt color, any shirt color behind that tree who the police officer's talking to? Do you see a color?
There's somebody standing there, but I can't make it out.
Do you know the color of the shirt?
Bluey grey?
Okay. Now, Ms. Knowlton was wearing kind of a light blue shirt, is that correct?
Yes.
And that is taking place in this area that we're talking about here. That's taking place while Chief Lewis is giving the instructions.
Correct.
Now, when Jeff Woodard came over with Ms. Knowlton, as you just testified about, I wanted to ask a few more questions on this. In state number 16, you indicated that they were, this was after Chief Lewis had explained everything. Did they move over to a different area to have this discussion? Do you recall?
I recall that that was happening after we were all in place, after Tom Lewis had finished his presentation to the chamber group, and we were all...
That was in relation to the group?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Do you recall where they were meeting in relation to the group?
I thought that was just to my left, because I was the last of the semicircle.
Okay. Do you know that to be the case, or?
No, but that's where those four people were just before Mary stepped forward into the scenario.
Okay. Now, in that scenario there where they are, do you recognize the officer that's with Captain Woodard?
Chris Salzman.
Okay. And do you know him also? From the
Yes,
agency?
yes.
In states number 18, as you described before, this is Chief Lewis again with the crowd, the way he talked about the soap pellet.
Right.
This person over here, do you recognize who that is?
It looks like the side of Jeff Woodard.
Do you agree with me that at all times when Ms. Knowlton came back out from whatever meeting she had before, with whoever she was meeting with, she was accompanied by Captain Woodard?
Yes.
All right. Last thing I want to ask you is that when you said you were in the room afterwards, is that correct?
After the shooting?
After, yeah.
Yes.
Everybody was in the room then.
Yes.
You said you were one of the last people to leave.
Yes.
At no time did Chief Lewis ever start talking to people about that he did something wrong, or he did something criminal, or he said anything like that at all to that group?
No.
You described him as being ashen.
Mhm.
What the jury would mean by that?
He was shocked by what had happened. Clearly shocked and visibly shocked.
Did you see anything about his demeanor that made you believe that he didn't care what happened to anybody that was there?
Absolutely not. No.
Nothing further there.
Any redirect?
What county did this event happen in?
Charlotte.
No further questions.
Sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
The state calls John Pryor.
Please stand here, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony given this class will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
This way, please. You put your items here.
Please make sure to speak into the microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us your name, please.
John Pryor?
You go by Jack.
Yes, Jack.
Can you spell your last name for us, please?
Pryor.
And where do you live, sir?
449 Panarea Drive in Punta Gorda.
How long have you lived here in Charlotte County?
2 years.
What do you do for work?
I'm an environmental scientist.
And back on August 9th of 2016, were you a member of the Punta Gorda Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, I was.
How long had you been a member?
Approximately a year.
I'm going to direct your attention to August 9th of last year. Did you attend a chamber police night at the Punta Gorda Police Department that night?
Yes, sir.
And had you ever attended a Chamber of Commerce event before?
No, that was my first one.
Have you ever been to the police department?
Earlier once, because of a car accident, I had to pick up a police report. That was about it.
Had you ever met Tom Lewis before that night?
No, I did not.
When you got to the Chamber Police Night, the first part of it, can you describe what happened in the first section of the event?
We met in the lobby at 5:30. Then we were escorted in to the, I guess it was like a classroom facility. The chief was there. He was shaking everybody's hand, and they came in. He seemed to have known pretty much most of the people there. I introduced myself to him.
In that, what kind of room was that?
It's similar to a classroom or a meeting room that you would normally had. It had desks, I guess, for 2 people, and there was several rows. And they had a projection screen in the beginning of the room, and we sat in the back.
PowerPoint display?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Was there anything on those tables?
Yes, in front of each seat was a book. I brought one with me today. Booklet, and in that was just a booklet, and inside the booklet was also a decal that you put on your car for the police department.
Were there any business cards in some of those booklets?
Only after they asked us to open was I aware. My booklet didn't have a card in it.
Were you aware that other booklets did have cards?
Not before I walked into the room.
Do you know how people were chosen to participate in what later happened, the shoot, don't shoot scenario?
They were asked to open the back of the booklet to see if there was a card in the back, and some of the booklets had cards in them, some didn't. Some of the cards said it was either firearms or gun, and then the other one said something about taser or stun gun, something like that.
Did you see a woman get selected in that classroom for the shooting scenario?
Yes, she sat one person away from me on my right.
Do you know who that person was at the time?
No, I did not.
Since then, have you learned who that person was?
Yes, sir.
Who was that person?
Mary Knowlton.
And did you see her get selected for this?
Well, she did raise her hand and said she had a card.
After the classroom portion of the event, what happened in the event that night?
They broke us up into groups, and they gave us a tour of the interior of the police department, the computer room, the evidence room, the detective room, the meeting rooms that they had. And then they escorted us back into the original room that we were in. They discussed a few other, they showed us a few items for like checking the tint on windows, things of that nature that they keep in the patrol cars. And then they mentioned that they were going to take us outside and show us the police vehicles that were outside.
Remember who your tour guide was that night?
The current chief, the acting chief.
Maybe Tom Lewis?
No, that would be Chisani, I believe.
Jason Chisquini?
Chisquini, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Inside the building at Punta Gorda Police Department, did you see any signs on the walls there?
When I first walked in, there was one over the door
sign on the wall? Overruled.
Tell us about the sign you saw when you walked in the
It
building.
was pretty interesting. It said, "This is the safest place in the city."
You mentioned that after the tours, you went back into the classroom briefly. Did you go outside at some point?
Yes, we were escorted out to the back of the building to where they had a police car, a police boat, a bicycle. I'm not sure if there was a motorcycle there or not. I didn't. I was mostly interested in the police car.
Did any of the officers explain the police car to you?
Yes, there was one officer that was explaining the patrol car. I don't know his name. He was explaining the equipment that they keep in the car. And then as he was finishing up, I was speaking to one of the lieutenants about the equipment that they kept in the trunk.
You may?
Mr. Pryor, I am approaching you to show you what's been moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 12. I'm asking you to take a look at that. You recognize that?
Yes, sir, I'm in the picture.
Okay. And what color shirt are you wearing in that picture?
I'm wearing a very light blue fishing-style Columbia shirt.
What are you doing in that picture?
I'm watching an officer demonstrate the, if I'm not mistaken, the air conditioning unit that hooks up to the, which I, being from up north, I found was pretty interesting. It's a, plugs into the vent in the air conditioning, and I guess they put it down their vest to keep them cool.
The officer is in the door there.
That looks like the chief here, but that's about the only person that I... Thank you.
After those displays that you set up the Marine unit, bike, and patrol car, was there a shooting scenario after that?
Yes, I was one of the last people in that area, and I was with the lieutenant. We were called down. Most of the people had started drifting to the area where the scenario was being performed.
Where was that scenario being done?
Behind the police department and, I guess, the fire department. There was like a curbing area, and the chief was standing up top there.
Was it in the parking lot?
Yes, it was.
And where was, you mentioned you were catching up to the rest of the group. Where were
Yes.
they?
They were already around, assembled in that area.
And you mentioned that Chief Lewis was up on the curb area.
Yes.
Where was Mary located?
I don't know.
The officer who was playing the bad guy in this role, the suspicious person,
Mhm.
did you see where he...
Once the chief started showing us the simulator Glock handgun, I guess in the middle of that presentation, I noticed I have situational awareness, so I happened to notice Officer Cole coming out of the back of the building. He had some sort of a vest on, and he was carrying a mask, like something they'd use in paintball.
Do you recall what kind of clothing he was wearing?
Black.
Wearing shorts, pants?
Long pants, and I believe a long sleeve shirt.
Before the scenario began, Mary Knowlton was brought out, did you happen to see her?
I really wasn't looking. It wasn't until they actually brought her up front that I actually noticed her, but I really wasn't paying much attention to her.
When you noticed her in front of you, how was she behaving?
She seemed like an active participant, if that's the right term.
After the shooting took place, were you and the other members of the chamber group taken back inside that classroom?
Yes.
While you were waiting inside that room, did Chief Lewis come into the room at any point?
Yes, he did.
Okay, did he say anything when he came into the room?
He explained to us that it was a tragic accident, and that, in not so many words, I don't remember his exact words, that it had been a tragic accident, that live ammunition may have been used, and that he thought it was his fault or his responsibility. I'm going to correct that. I don't think he said it was his fault. He just took responsibility for the event.
I'm going to back up for a moment. Before the scenario started, were you there when Tom Lewis explain the simunitions weapon to the group?
Yes.
And do you remember what he explained about it?
He held up the Glock, and he showed how it functioned. He showed that it didn't have a magazine in it at the time of the demonstration. And then he, which I thought was interesting, he showed us what the projectile looked like. I'd never seen one like it before. And then he kind of explained a little bit about the scenario. And then that's when I saw, my attention was drifted at that point to Officer Cole.
When he was explaining a little bit about the scenario, did he ever say anything about the officer, Officer Cole, who was going to be playing the bad guy, so to speak?
No, I didn't know how the scenario was going to play out.
Did he tell the group that that officer would have a gun?
I never heard that.
Did you see the gun that Officer Cole fired?
Yes, when he pulled it out, yes.
What kind of gun it was?
It was a revolver, silver.
Before the scenario began, when Tom Lewis is kind of explaining it to the group, was that silver revolver ever shown to the group?
No.
Did you ever see anyone check that officer or the revolver before the scenario began?
I didn't see that, no.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. I don't have any other questions for you, defense counsel.
Cross-examination?
Morning, sir.
So, let's go over a couple of things first.
Sure.
You would agree with me that when Mary Knowlton was with the chief in front of the group, she was accompanied by other officers there?
Yes.
And the chief had gone through, as you described, I guess, a lot of detail explaining the firearm that she would be using?
Yes.
And it went through basically explaining about the powder and the primer and the detergent, things of that nature.
Yes.
And you also, actually, isn't it true, recall him explaining to her actually the proper use of how to handle the firearm as far as where to keep the index and things?
Correct.
And you heard him explaining basically to keep it on the frame until she's ready to fire, correct?
Correct. That's the standard procedure.
Okay. And so he was doing all this with Ms. Knowlton after she'd been with whoever she was with away from the group.
Yes.
Now, I have a question for you, though, about, you gave a statement that night, August 9th at 11:23 p.m. to Special Agent Jennifer O'Connell with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, correct?
She interviewed me, yes.
Okay. And that was because you remained on the scene until you were interviewed, is that correct?
We had quite a few elderly people in the group, and I just thought it was proper for me to stay last.
So you stayed around for your interview, and you were interviewed around 11:23, correct?
Yes, that's approximately correct.
In that interview, you'd agree with me that you at no point when she asked you about what Chief Lewis said or inquired of any topic about what Chief Lewis said that he claimed when he came into the room, I take responsibility for this.
Something to that nature, yes. He said that.
You didn't.
Oh, I didn't tell her that. No, probably not. Probably wasn't, for whatever reason, it just didn't come up.
Well, but you did tell her that you heard him say something in the room, correct?
Yes.
And what you told her you heard him saying something in the room is he came in and he said that live rounds may have been used in this scenario, correct?
Yes.
When you saw him, you looked upset, correct?
Oh, yes, he was upset.
And as far as, when you described this plaque on the wall, tell me where you're talking, there's a plaque on the wall.
It wasn't a plaque. It's a sign over the door as you're in the main lobby as you walk into the police
Right.
department. There's a door that they escort us to. There was a sign above the door that said you're in the safest part of the city, the safest building in the city. It just caught my eye.
Now, you remember there being remember you telling the state that it was a plaque as you entered the building?
Sign, plaque.
Okay. And do you remember that the plaque actually talks about it's a safe center to exchange goods for people who do Craigslist or something, they can come use the parking
I
lot?
wasn't talking about that.
Okay. When you say it's a sign there, you see it from the front door right when you come in, correct?
I think you'd have to look for it. I noticed it as I was walking in, as if I was looking at that clock at the end of the hallway.
When you were interviewed also, you were asked questions about what happened that night as far as your ability to see things, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things that you told FDLE is that the officer with the gun drew the gun from his belt, correct?
From my angle, it appeared to be that way, yes.
You also told them that he aimed the gun low, correct?
Yes, I did.
And those were basically the things that, when you told them that night, would have been whatever the status of your recollection was that night.
Yeah.
That's what you were relaying from. Now, when was the first time, by the way, that you ever told anybody or claimed that Chief Lewis said, I'm responsible between that night, which is August 9th, 2016, and today, as far as telling law enforcement, prosecutor, any investigator in this case?
When I was speaking with the state's attorney, I mentioned it the other day.
Oh, so when did you speak to the state attorney?
I had a pre-meeting with him.
Okay, and in that meeting, is that when you said for the first time, by the way, he said something about being responsible that night?
It was just in my memory when he asked me if that was something that happened. I said yes.
So the state attorney raised to you, did Chief Lewis take responsibility, and then you said yes?
I don't know if that's the correct scenario. I just remember saying that I do recall that the chief coming into the room and explaining to us that live rounds may have been used and that he was taking responsibility for the action, as he did on television a few days later.
Right, but you just said before the jury, the state asked you a question about that, and you said yes, correct?
I believe he did, yes.
Okay, and so again, the origination of did he take responsibility or make a statement like that first came out of the mouth of the state attorney, and you confirmed it.
I don't recall if that's exactly how it happened. It just came up in conversation.
So it could have been that way, you don't recall today?
No, I don't.
Right.
Any redirect? No, Your Honor. All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. Counsel approach. All right, State, call your next witness.
State calls Lieutenant David Woodford.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, change of plans. It is 11:45. I know you just got a break, but we won't starve you out like we did last Friday. So what I'll do is I'll give you a little over an hour. Please be back. The court deputies will let you know where to come back. You're free to go about your personal business for the entire hour, whatever you need to do. Be back at about 10 to 1. They'll let you know where you need to meet to be back, so that gives you a little over an hour to do what you need to do. Again, I'm going to emphasize and instruct you, do not discuss the case with anybody. Do not do any research or look up things on your own. If anybody wishes to speak to you, please advise them that you are a sworn member of this jury, and if they persist, leave them and notify court deputies at once. So thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you back at 10 to 1.
You can just leave me on your chair. Can I take them? Yes.
Okay, court is in recess. I'll have everybody back here at 10 to 1 as well. Thank you.
Sorry, Your Honor, what time?
10 to 1. They will. Thank you, ma'am.